Hi, my name is Gurmeet Manku. In this video, I'm sharing my lunch strategy with you, which I have followed for almost 10 years now. And my lunch tends to be fiber-rich, as you can see in these food plates. These are pictures from 2021. In this video, I'm sharing the methodology or the strategy behind these food plates, not specific recipes, but how do we conceptualize these, and we can make many different combinations once we understand the basic strategy. So I follow a whole food plant-based system, and that is what makes it supremely fiber-rich. Let me explain how. So this is the whole food plant-based food plate as advocated by American College of Lifestyle Medicine. It's plant only. I didn't know this, but I learned, fiber is found exclusively in plant foods. So I learned that animal foods don't have any fiber at all. So meat, fish, eggs, milk, and dairy products have zero fiber. So that's why my food plates have no meat, no fish, no eggs, no milk, and no dairy products. So there is no ghee, paneer, buttermilk, chas, lassi, or mava, khoya, none of these things. Okay. So by having zero foods from animal sources and exclusively eating plant sources, my fiber intake becomes very large. Also, I learned that oils and sugars have no fiber. So oils are fat extracts, sugars are carbohydrate extracts. These two extracts have no fiber at all. So when I stopped deriving calories from these two sources, naturally, I'm deriving more calories from plant sources, and that's how my fiber intake goes up. Additionally, I learned that whole grains, should be preferred over refined grains. What is whole grain? Whole grain has three parts: bran, germ, endosperm. It turns out that the bran and germ is actually fiber-rich. Endosperm also has some fiber, but not as rich as the bran and the germ. So from fiber perspective, it's really important to eat all three parts. Then we get like a fiber-rich whole grain. So that's why I don't eat refined grains. Examples of refined grains are white rice, white atta, polished grains, and even suji, semolina, rava, these don't have the entire bran and germ that can be eaten. So I go for whole grains. That way I maximize my fiber intake in my food plates. Additionally, I learned that processed foods or ultra-processed foods, many of them don't have enough fiber, like they are fiber deficient. So we have to really go look at nutritional labels and study how they are made. So I simplify my life. I don't have the stamina to go and inspect food labels and study them. So what I do is I say I'll prepare all my meals at home. That way I know what goes into my meal and it is made of these components. No ultra-processed foods for me. So that way my food plate becomes extremely fiber rich. So that is what's going on in my food plate. Now, we can conceptualize this ACLM food plate as consisting of two halves. The left half has fruits and vegetables, a medley of rainbow-colored, some cooked, some uncooked. Right-hand side can be seen as calorie-dense plant foods. So they are whole grains, beans, peas, legumes, we can call them pulses, and nuts and seeds. The left-hand side, I personally like to visualize it as kandamul, phalphul, patti pani. So this is a peaceful forest dwellers food system from ancient India. So my understanding is in the past, saints and sages used to live in forests, and because they follow spiritual pursuits, they are peaceful people. So they don't go and kill animals, birds, worms, insects, snakes. They stay away from this killing. They actually eat plants only. So kandamul, phalphul, patti pani. What does this mean? Kand reminds me of shakarkandi and jimikand. So these are starch-rich underground root vegetables. Like in English, we will call them sweet potatoes and yams and similar vegetables. Mool reminds me of mooli. So there are vegetables like carrots, beets, parsnips, daikon, radish, turnip. So these are underground root vegetables. So they're not as sweet and as starch-rich as the sweet potatoes and the yams. But put together, all of these are root vegetables. Phalphul, my interpretation is this is basically fruits and vegetables. Patti pani, patti means leafy greens and pani means water. Put together, all of these put together is basically fruits and vegetables. It's actually possible to construct a nutritionally complete food system with just these ingredients. We can go to Chronometer and verify it, but it's very hard to follow and hardly anybody follows it. So I'm not saying we should follow it. I myself don't follow it yet. But what I'm noticing is that half of this food plate is this ancient food system, which is the peaceful forest dwellers food system from ancient India. Kandamul, phalphul, patti pani. I love it for that reason. In the modern world, we also have the right-hand side of the plate. This plate has calorie-dense plant foods. Calorie dense means, imagine a few fistfuls of whole grains, some beans and some nuts and seeds. In a few fistfuls, we get a lot of calories. Calories per gram is high on the right-hand side of the food plate. On the left-hand side, these are water-rich. Imagine holding a few spinach leaves and tomatoes and cucumbers. We don't get too many calories in the same number of fistfuls. Okay. Now the right-hand side, I tend to shrink it, paraphrase it as dal chawal. Okay, it's a succinct way of saying it. By dal, I mean any of the beans, peas, lentils, or beans, peas, legumes, any pulses. By chawal, I don't mean white rice. I mean any whole grain. It can be wheat, whole wheat, or barley, or sorghum, bajra, jowar. There are so many millets, or it can also be amaranth, buckwheat, quinoa, kaniva, teff, any of these whole grains. It can also mean one of the rices, like brown rice, like the whole rice, not the polished rice, but let's say black rice, purple rice, red rice, brown rice, any whole grain. So dal chawal is a succinct way of, in North India, we can call it whole grains plus beans, okay, and a few nuts and seeds. So that is how I conceptualize this food plate to remember it, okay. For my lunch, I make it slightly differently, okay. So let me explain what I do. For me, whole grains are part of breakfast, okay. So I don't eat whole grains for lunch. Instead, I replace the whole grain component by tubers, which is the kand part of it. Kandamul, remember, these are tubers, starch-rich, like sweet potatoes and yams, okay. Why do I do that? Well, this is starch-rich and whole grains are starch-rich, so it's a good substitute. Also, tubers are satiating. They make us feel full, just like whole grains. And also, they are sweet, okay. So for me, they are sweeter than whole grains. So this whole composition is actually more delicious for me, okay. It's more interesting for me. I guess this has to be experienced to actually see the difference. Okay, so for these reasons, I have this food plate composition. So visually, tubers, beans, and on the left-hand side is, I have split them into two components, leafy greens, because leafy greens are packed with nutrition. If you look at vitamins, minerals, different phytochemicals, and calculate how many of these do we have per calorie, not per gram, but per calorie, then fruits and vegetables are very rich as compared to other plant foods, but leafy greens stand out. They have very high micronutrient density per calorie. Okay, so for those reasons, I try to eat as many leafy greens as possible. Now at the bottom, I'm showing what I'm calling flavor enhancers. They are used in tiny quantities to make it very interesting. Herbs and spices, they can be both fresh and dried. And combinations, the famous combinations from worldwide cultures, time-tested. Nuts and seeds. So I don't eat nuts. I eat a few seeds. Now, why don't I eat nuts? I'll explain it in some other video, but I'm following a low-fat system, especially along the lines of Dr. Esselstein's guidelines for heart disease prevention. In some video, I really want to showcase what has Dr. Esselstein shown. I wish a lot of people just knew what he has shown and what motivates me to do all this. I'll make a separate video on that. So I became serious about the low-fat guideline just a couple of years ago. I didn't appreciate the value of the low-fat guideline for so many years. But once I appreciated, I went and removed nuts and started consuming only a few seeds. Berries. Now, berries are part of my breakfast, but I add a few berries to my lunch also. They're amazing, sweet and piquant. They add a very nice flavor to these meals. For citrus, we have, lime, lemon, and we have so many vinegars, including flavored vinegars. Okay, so all of these put together make it very flavorful, and it has to be tried, and then you will see what's going on. Okay, so my strategy is tubers, beans, leafy greens, and rainbow salad. And we can compose them in lots of different ways. Every day, I have to answer 5 questions. What tuber am I eating? What beans am I eating? What leafy greens am I eating? And what rainbow veggies am I eating? And finally, the 5th question is, how do I put them together with all these flavor enhancers to make it delectable? Okay. Okay, so another visual representation of the same. The bulk of the meal is tubers, beans, leafy greens, and rainbow veggies. And I don't eat nuts, but a few seeds, herbs, spices, citrus vinegar, berries in small amounts for making it amazingly flavorful. No dairy. So there is no ghee, no butter, none of those dairy products, no oil, no sugar, no salt also. But, so I have never added salt to my meals for the last 10 years. When I used to eat out, I could not avoid salt, but at home, I never bought salt. But when people tell me, no salt is very difficult, let's say my daughter comes, I have a couple of daughters, if any of them decides I want to follow this, and they tell me, no salt is difficult, I really can't find the right combinations of these flavor enhancers. then I would say, okay, if you really want to add salt, add a pinch, minor quantities, the littlest possible, and then slowly over time go towards no salt as you learn how we can replace salt with amazing combinations of these flavor enhancers. Okay. The other idea I have is these 4 steps can be developed in sequence. We can start with tuber recipes for, let's say, 1 week. And make them with the minimalistic additional ingredients from the flavor enhancers to see what makes it work for us. Everybody is different, so we have to figure out what combination works for us. Next, spend a couple of weeks with bean recipes. I'll share a couple of ideas. Third, develop leafy green recipes in like 3 weeks, and spend 4 weeks doing rainbow veggies. Okay, and there's a reason behind all this, because these components are more and more complex. There's more diversity, and it takes more time to develop like good recipes. Okay. So visually, I would say start with tubers. Shakarkandi. Okay, North India has shakarkandi, and street vendors, how do they sell it? Shakarkandi is baked, sliced into half. We put lemon and pepper, and it's ready to eat. Okay, there's not much needed. Instead of this simple recipe, we can experiment with extra dried herbs. There are so many available in the market these days. We can try international cuisines, spice mixes. My claim is all of them work with tubers, okay? Instead of simple citrus like lime or lemon, try vinegars. We can make it baroque with some berries. There are so many berries. I have a web page which lists what all berries we can buy in USA. Okay, so tubers is easy to work with. Now, how do we make tubers? We can boil them, we can steam them, we can bake them, either in the regular oven or in a smart oven. I used a smart oven often. So it's good to see, Google, what is a smart oven? And I used to take the whole sweet potato, put it in the smart oven, and it bakes by itself. No need to even chop it. And sometimes when I'm traveling, I would use a microwave. The whole sweet potato goes in the microwave. In a few minutes, it's done. Okay. So it might take a week to discover what way we like and what sweet potatoes we like. There are so many variations also. Colorful ones are also available. 2 weeks can be spent on beans. The simplest way to eat beans basically is overnight soaking followed by boiling. And my suggestion is, if somebody wants to get started and copy the kind of meals I make, garbanzo is a very good way to start. Chickpeas, garbanzo beans are very flavorful. I think a lot of people like them. And also the maximum number of recipes, in my experience, is for chickpeas. Okay, but we don't have to go experiment 20 different recipes to get started. Overnight soaked boiled chickpeas is wonderful. And if somebody is short on time, we can buy canned chickpeas. They will not taste good, and we should generally avoid canned foods for a variety of reasons. I mean, the best thing is overnight soaked boiling, but if needed, canned can come in. Salt-free canned beans are available. Okay, so what do we do with chickpeas, simple chickpeas and tubers? In North India, we have this amazing recipe. It's called chaat. So imagine chickpeas and crush them with our hand a little bit. Okay. Now it's crushed boiled chickpeas. Now we can combine that with shakarkandi, and we can make chole shakarkandi chaat. So how do we make it? All we need is a little bit of minced onion, red onion, little bit, some tomatoes. We can add a little bit of cucumber. We need some herbs and spices, some citrus, and you can see we made something tasty. On top of that, if we have some extra time, we can take some fresh herbs like mint or cilantro or basil or any other interesting herb that we have. Sometimes we can mix and match and, make a chutney out of it. Okay. Okay. The chutney should not have oil and ghee and sugar and salt. We can make it without all these ingredients. A very simple chutney. And add it to this chart that I'm describing, right? It's very flavorful already. So you can see how to make it. Okay. The second strategy for beans is hummus. So hummus is basically we take garbanzo beans, which have been cooked and boiled, and now we blenderize it in a blender. But it's typically done with a bunch of additional ingredients to make it very tasty. And the ratios start becoming important. So it's kind of a skill. But once we get that skill to make hummus, then we start doing flavored hummus. You can add ginger, wasabi, mustard, horseradish. Okay, there are fancy things we can add. I have seen beetroot hummus. Somebody made chocolate hummus. I have never tasted it, but there are many different recipes for exotic hummus recipes. Once we become skillful with this hummus thing, the same principles apply to bean dips. So we can take boiled pinto beans. We can make a pinto bean dip, black bean dip. Even there's a white bean dip. So it's just the same strategy. Now these hummuses and dips, once made, they can be put in the fridge and we can store them for a few days. Okay, so batch cooking. Same thing can be done with tubers also. We can microwave them or bake them. As long as the skin is intact, these tubers will last for several days in the fridge. Whenever if you're hungry, we can take it out. We can take out the hummus, and we have an amazing recipe already. Okay, these two. Okay, the next step is leafy greens. This is tough. Leafy greens, many of us don't get attracted to leafy greens. I have started saying, if you are attracted to leafy greens and you can eat them in large quantities, you are blessed. Okay. So it took me time, a few years, to develop this taste. Today I can eat a lot of leafy greens, but I did not used to eat leafy greens. I also did not understand that they are very nutrition rich. A friend actually told me several years ago, you should eat leafy greens. I didn't listen. Okay. He knows a lot about nutrition. So once I read literature 2019-20, I understood, wow, leafy greens are packed with nutrition. I really must eat them. And there are so many of them. Then slowly, over months, my intake increased. Today, I do eat much more than before. I think I can still improve. Okay. So how do we eat leafy greens? Basically, if you want to do it nicely, different leafy greens have their own nature of sorts. So there are classic recipes for each leafy green. But instead of that, I have simplified my life. I try 3 ideas. One idea is a morning's green smoothie. I do it sometimes, it's not common, but a green smoothie, which is low fat, and there are hundreds of recipes online for whole food plant-based green smoothies. Okay. A second recipe is basically, can I eat it raw? Okay, some of the soft leaves, I don't really have to do anything to them. I can just eat them raw as part of a meal and not by itself. Third strategy is, if it's a hard leafy green like kale or collards, then I will steam it. That's it. So steaming can be done using a steamer, but sometimes when I'm traveling, I have done steaming in a microwave. How do I do steaming in a microwave? So I have this deep dish, 1.5 inches, and I'll put the whole leafy green after washing into that dish. I'll fold it if needed, and I'll put a little bit of water. A few tablespoons is enough usually. I'll cover it with a piece of cloth or what do you call this? Paper towels. I'm not sure if a paper towel is a good idea, but that's what I do sometimes. And then I microwave it, and it softens. And depending upon how soft I want, I will microwave it longer and longer. And sometimes I'll just eat it as is, or sometimes I'll chop it. Now, how to make leafy greens tasty? The simplest recipe which I have understood is leafy greens either in raw form or in steamed form. We add vinegar to it. If you don't have vinegar, citrus will do. But if you have vinegars, there are so many flavored vinegars. There's like dozens of them in the market, okay? But if not, simple lemon or lime. And then we add spices. Interesting, dried herbs, dried spices. Just these 3 things are very tasty, okay? Rainbow veggies. So rainbow veggies takes time to skillfully mix a lot of different vegetables and make a rainbow colored kind of a salad kind of a preparation. But we can get started with very simple ideas. In North India, we have something called kachumbar. It's made of tomato, cucumber, a little bit of onion, okay, and herbs and spices, dried herbs mixtures or fresh herbs, some citrus vinegar. We can add some berries if you want, and that is our simple plain salad. It already has a few colors in it, okay? As a next step, I would say I would go and add some peppers. There are lots of peppers in California. We have sweet peppers, bell pepper, shishito pepper, banana pepper, and then some hot peppers like jalapeno, okay? The peppers can be chopped raw, or we can steam them and then chop them. Any combination that works for our palate. The next thing I would add is, some mildly sweet veggies. There's a long list of them. The ones I can remember right now are jicama, there is chayote, there is ivy gourd, ridge gourd, snake gourd. There's something called Armenian gourd. It's called kakdi in North India. There's a bunch of these vegetables, okay? We can grate them, we can just mince them, or if we want to cook them because we feel uncomfortable having them raw, then steaming them and then chopping them, okay? There are all these ideas that exist. Okay, the next step is, there are some hard veggies. They're all sweet in nature, mildly sweet. Examples are squashes. There's kabocha squash, butternut squash, there's delicata squash, there's a few squashes. We also have carrots, we have parsnips, okay? So all these are mildly sweet, and beets. So any combination of them, I cook them exactly the same way as I'm cooking tubers on that day. So if I'm steaming the tubers, I will steam all these hard veggies I told you. If I'm baking them, I'll bake them. If I'm microwaving them, because I'm in Airbnbs, I will microwave them, okay? Same strategy works. I can do them together also, okay? Okay, so, and I will do them in their whole form, okay? I don't even chop them. So after they are cooked, I will chop them. It's straightforward to chop after they are soft and cooked, okay? What else? There are these frozen veggies. Two of them are popular in California, sweet corn and green peas. Okay, so I'll sometimes add them to my salad. After adding all this, I will look into berries and fruits. A few berries and a few fruit. And for the fruits, I will go after grapes if at all possible, because they change the flavor dramatically. So a few sliced grapes, or if I have pomegranate, amazing, or any juicy fruit can go into this a little bit. Okay, and then I will look into odd tasting veggies. So what are the odd tasting veggies? Allium and cruciferous family, typically. Okay, there's a long list of cruciferous veggies. They're not like sweetish. They have a strange taste. So I'll see if I can add a few. Okay, will it go well with this? And among the alliums, it's basically onion, garlic, leeks, chives, and scallions. So I will see which one I have, and usually I add sweet onion. That always works. Okay, sweet onion is okay. Okay. So I think I described a sketch of an idea as to how I develop rainbow-colored salads. I'll write an article and I'll make a video separately, but this is just a sketch of an idea as to how we can develop it further. And it can take time to iterate and develop, but my goal was to just give a sketch of an idea of how to do this. The reason I'm suggesting minimalism is, those 4 components. For each component, find out what's a minimalistic recipe to make it tasty. The reason is that it will give us a deeper understanding of both nutrition and flavor. Okay, and it's very helpful in times of sickness. Many times we are just feeling low. Some sickness has come, or we're just feeling low. We don't have too much energy to go and cook. Then the minimalistic recipes are very helpful. Okay, with little effort, we get something nourishing. So it's good to understand minimalistic combinations. Okay, we also need backup systems. So I usually make fresh food, but once in a while, I will have canned food because that's necessity sometimes, especially during travel days. Or when I was sick once, I had a foot injury. I couldn't even walk at home. Okay, so sometimes we have to apply backup techniques which are suboptimal. It's very helpful in travel, knowing minimalistic recipes that work. Sometimes I'm in Airbnbs. I have to use a microwave to cook. Nowadays, I have become a raw foodist, so I follow a different system. But it's helpful to be minimalistic. Okay, once we have figured out the minimalistic recipes, we can start combining them. Okay, I'll give you some examples. So imagine combining rainbow veggies with beans. What does this mean? This is a bean salad. Okay, we can make a chickpea salad. We can make black-eyed peas salad. So that's basically what's going on here. We can make rajma salad. Okay, we can combine leafy greens with tubers. Aloo methi is an example, right? It's a cooked recipe. But if I make aloo methi today, I will steam the methi separately. And minimalistic steaming, because as we cook, overcooking leads to loss in nutrition. So I tend to cook different veggies separately, and beans and peas separately, and beans and whole grains, so that each one is cooked the least amount, and then I mix them up later. Okay, that's my strategy. But all these combinations exist. Just look up online, collards and sweet potatoes. Look at combinations of kale and sweet potatoes. You'll find almost every combination exists, and there are beautiful recipes. We can combine them in many different ways. So I'm basically in computer science, right? So I have plotted all possible combinations here. It's 2 to the power 4 minus 1. Okay. So once we have skillful in combinations, we can combine them in 3s. Okay. So there are many recipes like this. So let me show you all the 3 combinations. We can combine all 4 together. Okay. So I have done all these things in the last 10 years. So one way to combine all 4 is to make a stew out of it. Like a juicy preparation in which everything has been cooked. There is no raw food in the stew. So this with this, you mean tubers and beans put together. And we can add a few whole grains also, like the ones that easily cook. They will also go into this stew if needed. Leafy greens can be cooked along with this, and some rainbow colored veggies can go, and all of this stuff can all be packed together. There's a way to make stews which are so much flavor is in this. So I've served these to people and say, wow, it's packed with flavor. And we may not be able to make the best possible stew on day 1, but slowly, week after week, once we commit to this lifestyle, by the 3rd, 4th month, you will be amazed. Wow, I can compose these in so many interesting ways. Okay. The other way is to make a salad. So salads can be either 100% raw or a mixture of raw and cooked foods. Okay. So some cooked, some raw. They're all salads. So this one is a mixture of raw and cooked. It's a nice recipe I came across. I'll share a link in the YouTube description. But the composition follows the strategy I shared with you. Tubers, beans, leafy greens, rainbow veggies. Okay. The dressing was a bit on the high fat side. So I, as an individual who's following a low fat lifestyle, I would use a low fat dressing or no dressing. Okay. Here is another recipe, Dr. Furman's. We can look at the ingredients. The ingredients are basically whole grains, beans, leafy greens, and rainbow veggies. Okay. Now, if I were to make this recipe at home, I would say, yeah, perfect. We can have it as it is. Or I would say, okay, let's make this and reduce the quinoa and add sweet potatoes to it. Or I would say, no, just keep the quinoa as it is and on top of it add sweet potatoes. Or just replace quinoa by sweet potatoes. So I usually play around with sweet potatoes a lot because it adds flavor and it's very tasty. So they can be added to whole grains or their replacement, any combination. Or I will just have whole grains. Okay, all these combinations just work out fine. Okay, recap. 5 decisions. What tuber am I eating? What beans am I eating? What leafy greens am I eating? And what rainbow veggies am I eating? And how am I combining them? Okay. This leads to hundreds of combinations and recipes. Okay. So my style of doing it was like this. Let me just walk you through what I did. So this one has sweet potatoes. They are the orange ones. I made chickpeas here with something interesting. I forgot what I have here. I have some leafy greens. Some are cooked, some are raw. So this is a steamed kale. This is red lettuce. This looks like radish leaves. Yeah. And I have some interesting veggies and a little bit of fruit. Okay. Plus I will use all these interesting things like a little bit of seeds. I'm using citrus peels, vinegar, herbs, spices. Okay. It's very tasty. Once you compose it, you will see what's going on. The flavor is coming from this stuff. Sweet potatoes, garbanzo combination is very powerful. Okay. And all these interesting combinations, intuitively I figured out over time. Okay. That something works. So I can't really explain how I do it, but my suggestion to my friends is if you want to mimic this, over time we start figuring out the combinations that work for us. Okay. Another example, this is tubers. This is called Hana sweet potato. It's white colored and it's very tasty. One of my favorite sweet potato is this one. So it was steamed. I also steamed some leafy greens. There were mustard greens here. There is some canned beans going on, pinto beans. This one is kabocha squash. It's one of my favorite squashes. It was steamed along with the sweet potatoes. And I put in interesting things like berries, seeds, citrus, vinegar, herbs and spices. And it's amazingly tasty. Okay. This one was a memorable meal. I found it really delicious. I wanted to record what I made, but I didn't really write the recipe. It's just like this. Okay. You can see the same philosophy going on here. Now this one has extra fats in it. In 22, I learned, I should cut down on my fat intake. So today I will not make it like this. I will make it low fat. But I was eating like this for several years. Okay, same concept is going on here. This one is interesting. This one is a stew-like preparation. Again, it has tubers, beans, the red kidney beans, leafy greens, rainbow veggies, those squashes I told you, some tomato cucumber, some fresh herbs. Okay, you got the idea. Okay, this is a stew example. Okay, some people when I tell them. Or offer them. I have offered meals to people also. They say, where is the grains in this? Okay, because many of us are accustomed to eating whole grains for lunch. So if a friend shows up at my place and says, I need some grains with this, it doesn't look filling, even though it is filling. But they feel uncomfortable. So then what I do is, I offer them, okay, here is Ezekiel bread. So these are things we find in California. This is a special bread. I think it's one of the best breads around from a health perspective. It is made of sprouted grains and beans, and it is low sodium, no added salt, and no added sugar. There's pita bread. The only thing I saw was salt, but it's very low, and it's just 80 mg per pita bread. And this pita bread has 2 sides to it. We can slice it in half, warm it up a little, and becomes a pita pocket, and then we can pack the food inside it. This one is just corn tortillas, exactly how they have been made for hundreds of years. No added salt, no added sugar. Okay, so I would serve food like this. Once again, it has some avocado going on here. Today I follow even lower fat guidelines. But the idea is we make this food, and if a friend wants some roti or like bread, then I would serve it like this. And the bread has been heated. Okay, it's a flavorful meal. So some people feel uncomfortable, or they think, if I eat extra bread, if I eat extra injera, if I eat extra naan, I mean not naan, but a tortilla made of whole grains, I'm eating extra carbohydrates, so maybe I should increase my protein intake somehow. I might go protein deficient or something. Okay, so there are some concerns like that in people's minds. So I just want to shed light on something technical here through an example. So this is Clinical Practice Guideline for Diabetes Management in CKD, Chronic Kidney Disease by Kidney International. Okay, so these are clinical practice guidelines. They say patients with diabetes and CKD should consume, look at what is this, right? Vegetables, fruits, whole grains, fiber, legumes, plant-based proteins. My interpretation is it's basically ACLM's whole food plant-based food plate. That's my interpretation of what they're teaching us. Now in this publication, they have this picture. They tell plant proteins, where do they come from? Legumes, beans, peas, lentils, and nuts and seeds, and also whole grains and breads. Okay, so it's not well known that whole grains and breads also have protein in them. Okay, and in enough quantities that it's an important source of protein. So protein actually comes from the whole food plate, not just the protein section. Okay, that's why if we make this, whatever I made, the stew or whatever, and I serve it on top of an injera, or I serve it on top of a tortilla, it's perfectly fine. I don't have to think extra that, oh, I need to add extra beans or something. I don't think like that. There is no need to. Okay. For example, this is a food plate. It's being served on injera. So I could have served whatever I made on top of an injera without thinking too much. If somebody wants to know, do we really get proteins from whole grains also, and in surprisingly large amounts, I made a video along those lines. Okay. So if my daughters want to start this system, I would tell them, start simple. One methodology is what I have outlined. There are other ways to make food plates also. What I'm sharing in this video is just how I have done it for 10 years. And start simple, just get started somehow, and then keep learning, keep innovating. We cannot learn nutrition in one weekend or even 1 week. It's a learning process, both from a nutrition perspective and from a culinary perspective. It takes time. So over time, we might have all these questions that emerge. There are so many food groups: whole grains, beans, fruits. There are special classes of fruits called berries. You have alliums, cruciferous, leafy. Okay, so it can become overwhelming if you really want to study the subject in great detail and then compose food plates. Instead, it's good to get started somehow and then learn this over time. It could take several months to find answers to all these questions. So the questions like how many servings should I have of cruciferous, for example? What are the different techniques, cooking techniques? Is it satiating? What is the calorie density? Is it okay to pulverize it? Okay, there are all these questions that might arise. But today, I learned quite a few things in the last 4 years. I have some answers for myself. I can share them with you, whatever I have learned in other videos. But last year, I became a raw vegan. So that's a totally different way of constructing food plates. It's the same methodology, but slightly different approach. So I didn't show those food plates so that I don't confuse people. And I simplified my own food plate construction with just simple things. Okay, so I'll explain all this in a different video. I am collecting articles and information at Thankful to Plants. If you like these videos, please like, subscribe, and share them. I hope you found something of value. And please leave comments for me or contact me if you feel like. Thank you so much.